everybody out there in YouTube reality world, whatever you want to call it. This is Dylan Knows on a Saturday at 10 a.m. Doing my special Harry Potter series with the always lovely Karen. Hey, Karen.
Hello.
How y'all doing today?
Good. I'm excited to talk about the Prisoner of Azkaban.
Oh yeah, well we're gonna get right into it because both of us gotta leave early, so we're gonna jump in this and we're just gonna shoot right on through. I decided to go for the disheveled Sirius Black sort of look today. No shaving, my hair's kind of mussed up. I was just gonna roll out of bed and come down here and do the show, but I thought, I better look good for Karen. So, so let's talk about our book 3 in our series of Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. We can talk about the movie in a little bit because the movie is my least favorite, and I'll explain why in a little bit. But the book is actually a really interesting part of the series, and I don't know if you agree with me on that, but I mean, you get introduced to a number of new characters who will play important roles in the future, and it also sets up for the big event that comes in Goblet of Fire. So without further ado, I guess let's talk about the new characters. First off, we got to talk about, before we do that, spoiler alert. I know we say this every time. Everybody should have read the books or seen the movies, but just in case I don't want to get in trouble, we are going to spoil the hell out of the story. So Prisoner of Azkaban basically is the introduction of another aspect of Harry's family, which we have never really explored yet in the books, and we finally get a little bit more background on James and a little bit on Lily, not so much, but more about James in this one because we meet 2 of his best friends, technically 3 if you really want to go there. Mr. Sirius Black, Mr. Remus Lupin, and Mr. Peter Pettigrew. The 4 of them were, almost like the Harry, Ron, and Hermione of their time, always hanging around, having adventures and doing stuff, except they weren't facing Lord Voldemort. They were just being goofballs.
I was going to say dicking around.
So Sirius Black is the first big character that introduced. He is the aforementioned Prisoner of Azkaban, and when the book starts out, we learn that he was or actually, according to what everybody believes, is still a huge supporter of you-know-who, and is one of the only ones who has gone to prison for it and hasn't died, because after you-know-who had his defeat by Harry when Harry was a baby, Sirius apparently didn't take it so well and then went and attacked a bunch of muggles, but was stopped by his former friend Peter Pettigrew. Not really, though, because in the end, Sirius blew him up. But he got caught and sent to Azkaban, which is the wizarding prison. And he has been, up to this point, the only prisoner who has escaped. Now, everybody in the world now believes that he is coming after Harry because they heard him mumbling in his cell. He's at Hogwarts. So they believe he's going after Harry because Harry is the cause for his downfall and Lord Voldemort's downfall. So there's a bit of a tightened security around about Harry about this. So you want to go on about Sirius? Go ahead.
Sirius, because you just said that he was so upset that Harry was killed that he went and killed muggles.
Oh, I meant that Voldemort stopped, but that Harry stopped Voldemort.
Yeah,
that's what I meant to say. If it came out wrong, I apologize for that.
Okay.
But what's your take on Sirius, Karen?
Well, when I first read this, this was my favorite book when I was little. It's not my favorite book now, but it was when I was little, and I think it's because it introduces Sirius, who is kind of a badass, a misunderstood good guy, and Harry has a godfather now, and that was really touching because he's never had family before. So I loved Sirius so much, and when he, spoilers, dies in the 5th book, I cried so hard. So this book does introduce a lot. I'm just thinking about that, but
yeah, you get and Sirius is that adds that aspect to we get a look into James's life a little bit at Hogwarts. We discover that he sort of was, as it were, the cock of the walk. As it was, he was the one who, was a fantastic Quidditch player, much like Harry is, and we get to start seeing some of the more of the roots of why Snape hates Harry due to the fact that James and it gets rough for Snape, because not only he's excited now because not excited, but Sirius is back, and so he knows that now's his time, that if they can catch him, he can finally maybe excise that one demon he has in him. And then he gets introduced to Lupin. Well, not introduced, but Lupin pops up, Remus Lupin, who has become the new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher at Hogwarts, who is also a friend of James's and Sirius's. And Snape is. It's funny because Snape again shows a very interesting side to himself. He's very angry once again that he loses the Defense Against the Dark Arts job to someone that he does not like very much. But, and we learn later on down the line that Lupin is actually a werewolf. And yet Snape still makes the potion that helps Lupin control his werewolf side, or help him able to calm it down a little bit. He didn't. I mean, he did because that's what Snape does. But he, at the same time, if he could have screwed him in any way, if he could have messed it up. Yeah.
Lupin wasn't mean directly to Snape. Lupin, it was bad because he was a bystander when maybe he should have intervened and said, that's messed up, but he wasn't the one that was actively tormenting Snape. So I think out of any of them, Snape would be the nicest to Lupin. But still, he was best friends with James and Sirius, and he kind of saw it happening and didn't do anything about it.
And it does bring up an interesting thing, is that, once we learn that Sirius has entered Hogwarts, Snape begins to wonder if possibly Lupin is helping Sirius get into Hogwarts. And he obviously isn't, but at the same time, though, Lupin isn't doing as much as he could, once again being the bystander, because he knows about the Marauders map. He knows about all the secret entrances into Hogwarts that Sirius could use to get around the Dementors. And yet he doesn't really mention it to anybody. He doesn't mention it to Dumbledore or Snape or even McGonagall, for that matter, for anybody, to maybe we should keep an eye on these entrances. And
I wonder, because he really believed that that Sirius was responsible for the death of James and Lily. So why didn't he divulge that information?
Yeah, maybe there was always, I don't know, a little bit of doubt that maybe Sirius was to blame, because we learn later on that Peter Pettigrew, much like all the other guys, were animaguses and Amaguses. I'm sorry, and you'd think that if you knew Peter could turn into a rat, that he would probably be able to escape any danger or any event that inflicted, that could be caused by Sirius or anybody like that, explosion, whatever, unless it was just too sudden, because a lot of details are sort of left vague about how it happened. All I say is that he blew up Peter Pettigrew, and all that was left was his finger. Right. And we don't see the actual event. We just hear it secondhand. So I guess maybe Lupin is again just being the bystander, because that's the way his character is. He's maybe thinking, I don't believe that Sirius would. Well, you know what? I don't know. Actually, it's a very good question, and it makes you scratch your head a little bit, right?
Yeah, it goes along with Lupin's character, but I don't know. I think because they did find a finger, he did believe that Peter was dead, because he couldn't even fathom that he would cut off his own finger and fake his own death. And
and that does, and that, to be fair, that makes sense, because he knew Peter pretty well, and Peter was always seemed to be like a cowardly type of follower-esque type person. So, and maybe he might not appear to be quite so bright, and maybe to Lupin it didn't even fathom the fact that he could do something as smart as cut off my finger to pretend I'm dead and disappear for 12, 13 forever, for that matter. If he wouldn't have gotten found out, he probably would still be Scabbers, which is the other thing. Also, we discover that Peter Pettigrew is actually Ron's pet rat Scabbers, which is kind of creepy, actually.
It's really creepy. I think that was definitely an afterthought. I do not believe that she introduced Scabbers in book 1 knowing that it was going to be Peter Pettigrew. I do not think that, because it is so creepy. And the fact that Fred and George had the Marauders map for so long, and they would see that Ron is sleeping in a bed with Peter Pettigrew, it's really creepy. Really, really creepy.
I mean, I that makes sense, because maybe, when you're a writer, you have a general idea of what you want to do, but you need to figure out how to get there. And it took JK a little bit of time maybe to figure out how to do it. And then she had to introduce a way to connect everything. And when she first came up with the idea of Prisoner of Azkaban, maybe she had to figure out what would be the most obvious way to do it. And or easiest way, maybe not obvious, but easiest way to introduce this stuff. And yeah, it is. It's kind of weird. So we're introduced to those three, and it turned out that they were part of James's gang, as it were, at Hogwarts, and they each have their distinct personality. James was, the show-off type of guy. Sirius was, to be honest, I truly believe that Sirius was the leader of the group, and I think, am I wrong? Is because whenever. And when we find out later on in the book, like when we see Snape's memory of one bad event, Sirius is the one who says he's bored, and James is the one who does that to Sirius. Because he is so charismatic, because he is so badass, and he's the bad boy. He's he probably is the bad boy. Is probably the one that flirted with all of the female teachers, at Hogwarts to get a better grade.
I think Sirius was the one that got them in trouble, but James was the one who friended Peter, and James was the one who was close with Lupin, more so than Sirius and Lupin were. So I do think that Sirius was the main drive for them getting in trouble, but I still think James, I would argue with that James is still the leader.
Okay. No, that makes sense, because he had more. Yeah, I agree with that. He and Sirius were the ones that were the closest together. The two of them, James and Sirius, were. And as you just pointed out, yeah, James is probably the one that was friends with all three of them and brought them into the little group. And Sirius was just like, yeah, cool, whatever. They're cool enough for me. So that's interesting. And then let me see. We also get introduced to Professor Trelawney, who also plays a big role in book 5 also. A lot of stuff that happens in this one, a lot of the culmination stuff, I guess, comes in book 5, if you think about it, because you've got the Sirius situation where he passes away, and you get Trelawney, who is the divination teacher, the teacher who can predict the future by using palmistry and tea leaves and phases of the moon and the stars and stuff like that. And everyone, even Dumbledore, truly believes that she doesn't really know what she's doing. But the reason why Dumbledore brought her in is because sometimes she does get it right. She does have an actual sign that she does have this power, one of which is the prophecy that becomes the driving force in Order of the Phoenix. And the other one is the prophecy that appears in this one when Harry is chatting up there near the end of the story, when Harry's going back to the classroom, and she has one of her moments of being this actual telling the future in her creepy voice, which is setting up the arrival that looks like the servant of the Dark Lord is alive, and by midnight will be on his way to join him, and that will bring about the arrival of the return of the Dark Lord, who will be more terrible than before. And when Harry hears that, he absolutely gets freaked out, which he should, because that's a big prediction, and it ends up being true.
Mm-hmm.
So, Trelawney's always an interesting character. What's your take on Trelawney?
I mean, I love her relationship with Hermione. How it's the one class that Hermione does not do well on because it really doesn't make sense. And how Ron and Harry just make up stuff for their homework. I will be stabbed in the back by a friend that I thought I could trust, and then on Wednesday I'll develop a cough, and Friday I'll get in a fight, and they're like, oh, I was going to get in a fight on Friday, and it's like, okay, well, I'll make a bet. Yeah, you're betting that I'll win my fight. Like, so cute how much fun they have when they're making up the homework.
It really is. And that's one of the good lines in the movie. Actually, is when they are looking at the tea leaves, and Ron is looking at it, says, "Well, there's kind of a wonky cross, which means you're going to have great trials, and then there's also the sun, which is happiness, which I guess means you're going to have a lot of trials, but you're going to be happy about it.
Yeah, you're going to suffer. You're going to suffer.
You're suffer, but you're going to be happy about it." Which is an absolutely great line. It is, and it also it shows that Hermione is not perfect. I mean, yeah, it is a wonky version of magic because it's very unpredictable. You can't really put much stake into it because you're basically using, predictions. Basically, I mean, you're just looking at things saying, okay, this is or chance for that matter, that, oh, this is going to happen. The stars just happen to be aligned this specific way. Oh, it means you're going to be in trouble, It's, but at the same time, though, I think part of the frustration is the fact that she doesn't do well in it because she excels in every one of her other classes also. And let's talk about Hermione's journey because she has a very interesting arc in the book. And we get introduced to the Time Turner,
which I know J.K. Rowling regrets putting in.
Because I guess, using time travel, you could solve a lot of other problems. But exactly. Time travel is time travel is one of those things that is really hard because there's so much that goes into it. If you do use it to go back in time and say kill Hitler or whatever when he's a baby, yeah, you might stop the Holocaust, but what's causing someone else not to do it? Or maybe you're going off in a whole other direction. So what if you do this one thing, it could cause destruction in your future, because, it might be, you kind of need, I hate to say it, but maybe you need badness in your life to bring out the best and good. I'm not sure, but it's just time travel is just such a very iffy thing to write about and play with, right?
And I think she was writing it just so Hermione could take a lot of classes without
exactly.
thinking about the implications of time travel. And it is cool how when they go back, apparently, I forget who said this. It might have been Scott Barry. He might have said this, I'm not sure. But that it's really hard to pull off time travel well. And the way that she integrates everything, it's done seamlessly. So everything that happened when they had time traveled, I mean, you saw all of the signs, like the rock through the window and then the snail shell thing or whatever rock through the window. And how Harry thought he saw his father produce the Patronus. And then when he's standing there and he realizes that, no, he's the one who's supposed to produce the Patronus. I think it was done well. Just it added a little too much.
Yeah, and I agree. I think it was only supposed to be used as a one-off to, as you say, get Hermione to all her classes because let's face it, Hermione is the absolute overachiever. She wants to take and learn as much as she can about this world, which makes absolute sense because she, up until 2 years ago, thought she was just a regular muggle. She didn't know she had she might have had weird things happen to her, but she always thought she was just a normal girl, normal human girl. And then she discovers that she's a part of this whole other world. And her being Muggle born, she deals with these discriminations and stuff like that. She has to deal with for the purebloods, that she has to push herself to prove that despite the fact she's human, or not human, I should say, because they're all human, being a Muggle, that she deserves to be at Hogwarts. You know, she might not be a part of a pure blood magic family. That's not her fault. You know, it's just that's the way it goes. I mean, your parents weren't witches or wizards. We're normal people. You know, there's nothing you can do about that. But the fact is, you want to show that you are. She wants to prove that she belongs in this world, to prove all the haters wrong, to prove all the pure blood people who hate the Muggle-borns wrong, that I absolutely belong in this. So she figures the best way to do that is to excel at every level in magic, and not just one aspect of it, to ace every single one. So she pushes herself a little too hard in this, I believe, and it shows on her, because this also brings her one of the absolute worst things to happen to her, with her breakup from Ron and Harry for a little while, where this is the first time that the three of them had any real friction within their little mini group, and it's not the last time. Actually, we get more friction in book 4, and then again in book 6. So you get that you get that friction, and it's the first time you've ever seen that, because up until that point, in the first 2 books, the three of them had been inseparable, and yeah, she might have been a little bit of a know-it-all, but in the end, they've learned to count on her for a lot of things and be friends with her. And then this situation occurs where the awesome Crookshanks, because we got a kitty now, yay kitties, supposedly may have killed Scabbers, and that upsets Ron to no end, and so it causes the friction between the two of them. We learn obviously later on that wasn't the case, that Scabbers was freaked out because he was Peter Pettigrew and he knew that Sirius was coming after him, and so he wanted to get away from him. So it's a very interesting, and then also this is something that we can get into when we talk about the movies, but I understand why they didn't do it in the movies, but this also, you need to have her do something, so she ends up helping Hagrid with his case for saving Buckbeak, the hippogriff. And that gives her a really interesting story arc as well, and I want to get your take on Hermione's trials this book.
I don't know if I have any really strong feelings about Hermione in this book.
Okay. I'm just trying to just dig a little deeper, but I mean it's cool. So that leads to I know we're sort of jumping all over the place, but we're trying to get as much in as we can within the next hour. So and then, as I said, the whole hippogriff incident. We now have Hagrid has now become a teacher at Hogwarts while still being the gameskeeper. And he's now the teacher of the Defense Against the Dark Arts, and not defense. I'm sorry, Care of Magical Creatures. Yes. That's what I meant. That would be very interesting if he was the teacher of Defense Against the Dark Arts.
So bad.
But despite what everybody says, I think I like the fact that Hagrid wants to jump right into, with the hippogriffs, showing them the hippogriffs. Yeah, maybe, he should have started off, with something smaller, but he's so excited. It's like his forte. It's exactly what he loves. He loves these type of creatures, and he has no concept that they could be dangerous to.
He does have that concept, but he has no concept that a student would go and provoke the hippogriff.
Right.
So it's like he doesn't have the experience of a teacher to always keep an eye on the students and to keep an eye on the creatures that he has. So I don't think the hippogriff necessarily was a bad idea, but he didn't have the experience to. I mean, Malfoy shouldn't have been able to get that close to the hippogriff. Should have been a more controlled environment, but he meant well. Hagrid did.
Yeah.
Malfoy.
Yeah, and that's just showing Malfoy again. So I mean, that's that's Malfoy being Malfoy again, and so we learn about a new creature called the hippogriff. It's kind of I guess not really a griffin type looking thing, but it's the bird like horse thing, I guess, which is really. I'm sorry. What?
No, you're right. Yeah.
Oh, okay. But I like in the movie the idealization of it. I like seeing how it actually looks. I thought the hippogriff looked really good in the film as well, and has probably one of the better scenes in the film of Harry riding it around the grounds of Hogwarts with the gorgeous John Williams score. Getting it up in the air, and it's just absolutely fantastic sequence. And Buckbeak
puts his talon in the water when they're flying over it. That's one of my favorite parts.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. And it introduces Buckbeak, who pops up in later books. So because of what happens in the end. So is there anything you wanna jump into before we start going down the rest of the story? Is there anything you want to talk about?
Well, with Buckbeak, it was another emotional part when I thought he had died. I cried. This book made me, well, no, not this book, but things introduced in this book make me cry in later books, like Sirius. But with Buckbeak, yeah, I really thought he had died, and I was so sad. And then when they went back and saved him, but they had saved him all along, they just thought he had died, but he hadn't actually died. That's where the time travel is done well, because it's not like an event happens and like Buckbeak's head is chopped off and they see it get chopped off and then they go back and save him. They thought he had died, but they had really already saved him. So that is really cool, because if you think about time travel and you think about an event happening and going back and changing it, it's like, wouldn't it had already happened? Like you already would have changed it by the time you experienced it. That's where time travel gets a little muddy.
Yeah, and that was actually kind of the interesting thing about, I guess, maybe in the book and the movie was when Harry and Sirius are getting attacked by the army of Dementors, and the Patronus comes and deflects them back. At the time, as you said, Harry believed it was his father doing it, but then we find out later on that Harry's doing it, and he's got that line in the movie's like, I knew I could do it because I'd already seen it.
Exactly. I'd already done it, so I knew I could do it.
So we also get our first look at Hogsmeade, the wizarding town, which is on the outskirts of Hogwarts. Mm-hmm. Much like any other little town, it's a college town basically. Well, you got your bars, you got your joke stores, you've got your I love, and then we get to explore more, down in the other books. Like we find out there's the little tea house in once again in Order of the Phoenix. We discover the little tea house. Valentine's Day with that, which is kind of sweet and kind of nice, and it seems like a an old style wizarding village, and it's really cool, and it's really neat to have one of these towns, and you get a lot of more exposure to them later on in the books as well. And it was fun to get introduced to the Hogsmeade and Honeydukes, and the place where you get butterbeer and the Shrieking Shack, which is supposedly the most haunted place in the area. But go ahead.
Don't they mention the Shrieking Shack in the second? No, they must not have. So it's in the third that they mention the Shrieking Shack, but I like how the Whomping Willow is a part of that.
Yeah, that was it. The Whomping Willow just appeared in the second one, and we had no idea. We just thought, okay, it's a magical type tree. It's on the grounds of a magical school, so it makes sense to have a tree that hits you. But then we can.
And I like those elements that are introduced early, and then you find out more about them. Whether or not she had planned that, like for instance with Scabbers. Clearly, she did not plan to have Scabbers be Peter Pettigrew. But right. I wonder with the Whomping Willow if she just kind of repurposed that, or if she had planned it all along. But for example, in this book, the Shrieking Shack is introduced to have Lupin have a place to go, and it's haunted because he went there every full moon, and that's why.
Exactly. He's howling because he's a werewolf and he's smashing things, and no one, and then you send the story. Yeah, it's haunted. There's a ghost. You're not going to want to go there, right? You don't want to hear these, anguished howls in your sleep or whatever. You're not going to investigate that.
Even if it hadn't been used in years and years and years, it's the myth, the legend continued. And there was truth to it.
Oh, yeah. And then you also mentioned introducing things early that pay off in the end. We are introduced to two other minor characters in this one who play bigger roles later on. We're introduced to Mr. Cedric Diggory.
Yes.
And Miss Cho Chang. Mm-hmm. So, and now I think with the introduction of Cho Chang in this one, JK, she wanted to introduce a potential love interest for Harry because they're at that age now. They're 13. Okay. That's when your hormones start, really raring, and you start maybe getting away from more along the lines of, okay, I want to, play with video games, stuff like that. Now you're thinking more like, oh, look at that woman or girl, actually, that she's beautiful. I'd love to kiss you, that type of thing. And we get to see little bits and pieces of that in Prisoner of Azkaban because Cho Chang is his first real crush that we actually have seen in the book. And we learn later on down the line, she plays a big role once again, especially in Order of the Phoenix. She plays a big role in Goblet, but an even bigger role in Order of the Phoenix. And once again, a lot of stuff she introduced in number 3 gets played out a little bit more into book 5 as well. Now with Cedric, let me throw this out at you. Did you think that her plan for Cedric the whole time was what actually happens to him in Goblet of the Fire, that she set the seeds for introducing this character and then killing him in Goblet of Fire? Do you think that she did that deliberately? I think personally, I think she knew that someone had to die in Goblet of Fire, and Cedric was probably, it couldn't be a major character, so they went with, someone that they introduced before who's appeared in a previous book. Do you agree with that assessment, or am I way off?
I don't know. I think it's hard to say. I think it could have happened like that, or she could have. I know that she wrote down the list of names for the students. She has a full class list of every student that attended Hogwarts when Harry was there. So I'm wondering if she had Cedric, and because obviously she knew that Voldemort was going to be introduced in the next book on a real level. So I'm wondering if she purposefully introduced Cedric in this and then had him play a major role in the next one. But it's hard to say. I think it's cool how Cho Chang, the actress, she's in the 3rd movie.
Oh, she is?
Yeah. In the hippogriff scene, she's there. She's attending the class.
You know what? I saw the movie 3 times in the last month. One because my daughter wanted to watch it after she read Prisoner of Azkaban, and then one to prep for the show. And then actually on, it was yesterday. Actually, it was on Friday. She wanted to watch it again because why not? So I watched it again, but I missed that totally. Wow.
Yeah.
Not to go back and watch it.
Which, it kind of doesn't make sense because Ravenclaw, they didn't have care of magical creatures with Gryffindor and Slytherin, but I'll move past that.
Well, we can talk about that when we talk about the movies, which we're going to do in a few minutes, because there's a lot of stuff they do that doesn't make a lot of sense. Yeah. But yeah, and then have her appearance in Goblet as I think the actress is Irish. I think she's got that Irish accent, which is really kind of cool to see. An Asian woman with an Irish accent. I think it's cool. Not to be racist or anything. I think it's cool to see that. Okay, you look Asian, but not all Asian people have Asian accents. They have other accents. So we get introduced to them as well. So this book is a huge, introduction to a lot of different aspects, and then we can even chat a little bit about Peter too. Getting past the creepiness of being Scabbers and being Ron's pet, we discover this literally mousy type of guy who was the follower. Everyone knows that there's those people who, the groups of people you see around. There's always the follower, the one who, is the the least popular of the group, who wants to be such a big part of it, and a lot of people tolerate them because they first of all they like the person, but some of it gives them a chance that they can make this person do things that they don't want to do because they want to be a part of this group. So they can throw some other stuff at them to do. So that's what Peter's aspect was in this. And the fact that it's interesting that he turned on James and Lily because the Dark Lord was so powerful. I'm still trying to wrap my head around his motivation for.
Well, he's a follower.
Right. Okay.
He was at school. He followed James, and idolized him. But after school ended, I don't think. I mean, this is me just assuming. They weren't as close as they were, and Peter became close. Well, as close as you can get to Voldemort. So he started idolizing Voldemort and didn't have that same, what's the word for it? I'm trying to say he was infatuated with James. So when that infatuation faded, he was able to do things like reveal where they were hiding because he was now infatuated with Voldemort.
And I guess, that's why James chose him for the Secret Keeper. I mean, I guess they must have kept in touch somewhat because he was able to, it would be weird for him just to show up on Peter's door and say, "Hey, Peter, I'm being hunted by Voldemort. You want to be my Secret Keeper?"
It was Sirius. They chose Sirius. And
yeah,
Sirius
Sirius was the one that, okay, that's right. Okay,
yeah,
that's right.
Who at the last minute said, "No, make it Peter." Yeah. I don't know why, but.
Maybe, I guess, because Sirius might be the most obvious choice.
Right.
But, at the same time, though, but he would be the one that I guess in the end, it could just be a mistake. And people make mistakes, a mistake on their part, because Sirius would be the one. And he mentions it too. He says, "I'd rather die than, revealed their secret." So he would have willingly gone through the torture and would have died. He would not. And I truly believe, as I know you do too, he would never have revealed their secret,
right? Even
under torture and murder and stuff like that. He would never reveal that. And it was a mistake, I guess, on Sirius's part, where he thought that he was maybe smarter than Voldemort. It's like, you know what? They're going to come for me probably because they think I was the closest to James, but why don't we switch it around and give it to someone who, is part of the group, but maybe not as close with James. Mm-hmm. And they would probably never suspect that he would be the one because it's Peter Pettigrew, and in the end, it was a mistake that, the Potters had to deal with. They ended up being, they made the mistake that caused him death. And that could be why Sirius is the way he is, I mean, he's got the massive guilt in him and the anger and the insanity of being in Azkaban for 12 years.
But I like how he was able to hold on to a slight shred of sanity because he was able to always remember that he was innocent, which they take away every happy memory that you have and they leave you only with the bad ones. And that was a bad memory for him, that he had made that mistake and that his friends had died. And he did have that guilt. He said it was, he might as well have killed them himself because it was such a big mistake. But he was able to hold on to that information and know that he was innocent. So, I mean, a lot of people go more insane than he did.
And so, yeah, that's right. And so that's good on that end. So, let's see, anything else to touch on the book?
Mentors.
Oh yeah, why don't we talk about them? Go ahead. Why don't you do it?
Being introduced, and I like how, like I said, they take away every happy thought you've ever had, and you're left only with the dark ones. I love how it's a personification of depression, and how Lupin gives Harry chocolate to make him feel better because that's, what's depression.
It makes you feel better. Yeah.
It makes you feel better. So that's the logic for that one. And with the Dementors, we find out the actual dialogue that happened between Voldemort and Lily when she was killed. So the Dementors come when Harry's playing the Quidditch game, and he hears his mom screaming, "Not Harry, please not Harry." Voldemort saying, "Stand aside, you silly girl. Stand aside now." And she said, "Not Harry, please no, take me, kill me instead." And then, "Not Harry, please have mercy, have mercy." So, and then the shrill voice laughing. I mean, he was there, but a baby would not remember that. But since it was such a powerful moment in his life, it was somewhere in his head, and the Dementors brought that out. So we got a little more information that Voldemort didn't intend to kill Lily, which comes back later, and I do think that was on purpose. But that's a huge piece of information.
It really is, and we wouldn't have gotten it if the Dementors hadn't been there. Mm-hmm. So that is amazing. And I was going to say something about them, but I forgot what I was going to say.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine. It happens to me all the time,
It'll come back to you.
When you get older, Karen, what happens? So let me see. Let's see. Dementors. Hippogriffs, Azkaban. So I think we've covered most of the important things about the book, because the movie decides, hey, we're not going to talk about a lot of this stuff, and just go whoop.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Now, what I think, look, once again, when I say that The Prisoner of Azkaban, the movie, is my least favorite movie, it doesn't mean I hate it. It doesn't mean I think it's one of the worst movies ever made. I don't. I think it adds a nice element to the series, but at the same time, it gets my mind to the point where after the first two films, which were almost direct retellings of the books, there's some slight changes here and there, but that's to be expected. A new director comes in Alfonso Cuarón, who is a good director, but and I don't know how much it was him or if it was Steve Kloves, who was still, which is interesting because Steve Kloves is the guy who pretty much writes every movie. I think he skips maybe order. I think he doesn't write order. I think that's the only one he might not have written, but he ends up writing the rest of them, the screenwriter. I don't know if it was him or if it was Alfonso saying, I don't want all this stuff in it, or I guess you could say a lot of the stuff that is excised from the movie is not, I guess, that important in the end. There is one major thing that is still sticking with me that really makes me hate it, is the fact that we never are revealed in the movie who created the Marauders map.
Oh,
it's such an easy throwaway thing, because all Lupin says, played by David Thewlis, says to Harry is, I know this map. It never lies, or even Sirius, played by Gary Oldman, says it never lies, So how do you know? You could have just had an easy throwaway line where Lupin says, well, you know what, Mooney, Padfoot, and Prongs was me and my group. We made this map because we were exploring all over the place, and we made it, just a simple throwaway line, and I would have been satisfied, because my brother-in-law, Mike, he never read any of the books. He watched the movies first. Mm-hmm. And after he saw Prisoner of Azkaban, my sister-in-law, his wife, Catherine, had to explain to him everything that he missed, because, Catherine had read the books, and she's like, well, the Marauders map was written by, was written by, Peter, James, and Sirius and Lupin. And he was like, really? Yeah. Because that's the one thing that still sticks with me, because look, I can get past the fact that you didn't want to deal with the whole Quidditch Cup storyline, which I still think is good. But in a book, you have a lot more space and a lot more stuff to fill that gap. I can get that. I can get the fact that they didn't go more in depth with Hagrid's battle to save Buckbeak. It's only a couple sequences. There's one where the attack happens, the one where he says he went to the hearing, that Buckbeak's going to die, and then the executioner comes. That's all they cover with that. There's nothing about Hermione helping him. And the other thing that kind of makes me kind of angry is you don't see the breakup of the friendship for a little bit. There's just one sequence where Ron's yelling at Hermione that, at least, my pet, it wasn't a bloodthirsty killer or whatever. And it was just a simple throwaway line. And they're still together because Hermione and Ron are at Hogsmeade in Christmas time. Whereas in the book, it's just Ron and Harry. And Harry gets into trouble because Malfoy pulls off the invisibility cloak and sees his head after he gets hit by all of the snowballs. So he's going to go back and tell Severus because Harry's not supposed to be there, and his head is in there. What is going on with that? And so that's what happens when Severus finds him, and we learn about the map a little bit more, and that Snape knows is not that dumb. He Lupin comes in and saves the day, but Snape's like, there's something with this kid. Damn him. But I guess those are the two biggest things is the fact that you didn't see more friction between the group, Harry, Ron, Hermione, and the fact that they excised the whole, we made the map. They're just like, oh, this map never lies.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, if you watch every movie from start to finish, it doesn't make sense. Because they didn't know what was going to happen in the later books to add things. One of my biggest things is later on, and I'll talk about it when we got to the 7th. The series.
Is it with Dobby?
No. Oh, that is a huge issue.
Because he does not appear again until the 7th movie. Right. I was like, really? Yeah. I mean, and then he just pops in there and then he dies.
No, they bring him back to kill him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they give every part of his to Neville. Anything that Dobby did in the books that was important, they had Neville do in the movies. But no, it's the mirror that Sirius gives Harry.
Oh, yeah.
In the 6th movie so in the 5th movie, they don't even mention it. And then, is it the 6th or the 7th where he has the mirror?
No, it's in the 5th one. It's in
the book he has the mirror.
No, because Sirius gives it to Harry, but it's one of his presents that he doesn't open. He puts it in his chest and is buried because it's the whole thing with Mr. Weasley getting attacked, and because it's around Christmas time, I think. Because I think for his birthday he was given the knife that could open any door or box or whatever by Sirius. Then at Christmas time he's given a present, but because of the whole situation with Mr. Weasley being attacked by Nagini and having to deal with the whole hospital thing, he just takes it, and they got to hurry. So he takes it, puts it into his chest, and throws all the stuff on it, and doesn't even think about it. And then the situation occurs where Voldemort shows him that Sirius is getting tortured and that Harry wants to save him, but it turns out to be a false memory, and it's a setup, it's a trap. And if he would have known about the mirror, he would have been able to find Sirius, and that whole situation wouldn't have happened. But he didn't. It was buried. He had forgotten completely about it. And then at the end, after Sirius is dead, and he's going through his things, and he's trying to recover from it, he's repacking his chest or whatever, and he discovers the broken mirror. And he keeps a shard of it. I think he throws the rest of it away, but he keeps a shard of it, and that's what appears in the 7th one. Is the shard pops up in that one.
Looking at it, and it's like they have no explanation for what it is, or that could have prevented Sirius's death if he only would have known about it. I just think it's funny how stuff like that is just thrown in there, and it doesn't make any sense. I don't know if they assume that you've read the books or what.
That's my biggest thing. I think they figured that everybody who would come watch the movies have read the books already because they want to see their favorite book series up on the big screen. But that's not good thinking, because there are people out there who's like, you know what? They don't have the attention span to read, or maybe they don't have the time to read a book, or they always thought that Harry Potter was a kid's book and the parents take their kids to the movie. They've never read the book, and so they're watching it with it. And, you need to have something, either, and yeah, I agree with that. They might not have known what was happening, that the mirror would come back to play, and that's why they didn't mention it in Order of the Phoenix. But once again, a simple throw off line by Harry saying, "Oh, this is the mirror that could have saved, that could have, or he could have had the shard," and Ron could have said, "Hey, what's that, Harry?" And he's like, "Yeah, this was a piece of a mirror that Sirius gave me before he died, which would have been able for me to contact him at any time, and I forgot about it," or whatever. Just a simple little thing, so you know what it is. Simple throwaway lines. Like the same thing with, yeah, we made the Marauders map. Okay, it makes sense why Lupin knows what it is. And why Sirius says it never lies, because they made the map.
Right.
A simple throwaway line. We made the map.
Yeah. That really does bother you.
Yeah, that bothers me. And the fact that Ginny appears like for a total of 2 seconds. It has like one line. Granted, she doesn't have a big appearance in the Prisoner of Azkaban, but still.
Yeah.
I mean, it's more frustrating in the other books that she plays a much bigger role in, and we've discussed that. That's one of our pet peeves about the movie series, is that they totally mishandled Ginny's character.
Yeah.
But I know maybe I put too much thought into it, but still, it just
a bigger issue with the movie than just the Marauders map.
Well, what's your take on the film?
I mean, it's okay. It's not my least favorite. It's not my favorite. I don't like the werewolf that they used for it. He looks weird. Like, it's just a weird interpretation of what a werewolf should look like. But other than that, I mean, also with Sirius, they sell it a little too well that he's evil. Or the things that he says, it's like, why would you word it in that way? Why wouldn't you just say, he killed your parents, or you explain it in some way? I get that he's gone insane and that would make it harder for him. But that's my only issue with the movie, is that I do like how Hermione punches Malfoy.
Yes, that is a classic. And the other thing I thought about also, I just literally thought of, is they also don't really say that James is an animagus either, and explain why Harry's Patronus is a stag. They don't explain that.
Yeah. And they don't explain that. One of the sweetest things is that Lupin was a werewolf. And he was really self-conscious about it, and just a lot of anxiety and depression from it. And so what did his friends do? They all learned how to become an animagus, and that's just so sweet to me. And that isn't included either. But I get why that isn't included. But it's one of my favorite parts. That's why they learned how to become a dog and a rat and a stag.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing is, and what makes me a little, not upset, but what I find interesting is that they don't really delve too much more into the aspect that James was an animagus, and in the rest of the book, in the rest of the book series, I mean, yeah, he's not alive. He's not a part of the story in general, but I'd like to maybe have learned a little bit more about their adventures, and the fact that he could actually become a stag. I mean, how would Lily respond to that? Wouldn't that be kind of neat to see what her response to that, when he admits that to her and does it, and shows her?
I mean, her Patronus is a doe.
Yeah, I know.
Oh.
But still, I mean, and that's the thing also, is that in the movie they just automatically throw out that he's an animagus. Okay. And we get into the series that you have to be a license, or you have to be on a list saying you're an animagus. I mean, McGonagall is, and if you're an animagus, you have to be on a specific list, but these guys aren't. And if, and in the movie, it's just, once again, Ron says, he's an animagus. It's him. It's Sirius Black. Well, shouldn't there, and plus they don't ever even mention the list. So, I mean, I guess since they didn't mention it in the movies, it's not a big deal that the fact is they would know that Sirius was, could turn into a dog, and then they would be on the lookout for a big black dog instead of just the prisoner. Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying, is that they don't even explain the fact that there is a list. It's just he's an animagus, but that's an interesting thing, because it means that, none of them, they're unlicensed animagus, as it were, and that nobody knows that they were. And I guess that helps in the end.
Unlicensed, right?
What's that?
Rita Skeeter is also unlicensed.
Yes, she is. Yes.
Sorry, that's for later.
No, that's fine. No, but that
pops in my head.
no, it's true. I mean, we go all over the place, so it's fine. But I like the film itself. Another thing that I don't like about it, and once again, I understand the whole thing. It took me a while. When I first saw the film, it didn't upset me, but I was just kind of a little PO'd about some of the changes they made. But gradually, as we watched the rest of the movies and the rest of the book, I came to the understanding that there's no way they're ever really going to do a true adaptation of, a book or a movie or a story in a television or movie. Same with comic books. They don't do exact adaptations of the stories in movies. They just can't. For specific reasons. So once I got in that mindset, I was like, okay, both Harry Potters are different. Yes, they had the generally same, storyline, but a lot of the extra stuff is not in there, which you don't need to have in there in some cases. In some cases, it would have been nice to have it in there. Like, I personally believe, we can talk about this next month, I believe Goblet of Fire should have been the 2 movies. Because there's just so much going on in Goblet of Fire, and I know, and I'll talk about this next month too. I know the exact spot where you would end the first film and start the second one. I got it all worked out in my head. But what really got me is I know sets and locations, stuff like that, might not have been freed up, but after seeing the first 2 movies, you have a specific idea of what Hogwarts looks like in the movie world. And then you come to the third one, and it's now completely different. Hagrid's hut is now multiple rooms, which it isn't in the story. Because remember, there's 2 rooms, and it's much bigger than it was in the first 2 movies and in the books. Hogwarts is now on the top of a hill, and a lot of them walking is down a steeper hill than it was in the original 2 movies, where it was just a little slight hill down to Hagrid's spot. And what else threw me off on that one? No, that's really about it, I guess. And just the fat lady was completely different. Also, the location of the Gryffindor common room was more in a main zone, because they're walking up a stairway, and there it is.
I know.
You always think that they'd be off on you think they'd be off in their little side hallway or whatever, where, granted, everybody probably knows where it is, where everyone's common rooms are, but you really don't, because there are sequences where, I think in the second book, they're trying to find the Slytherin common room after they've taken the Polyjuice potion, and they're like, okay, I think it's down in the basement somewhere, and they don't know. But,
so Slytherins, they're in the dungeon, Hufflepuffs, they're by the kitchen, and Ravenclaw, they're up in a tower. And then Gryffindor is just in the middle of the school.
Something like that. Yeah, exactly.
They're right at the top of that staircase.
Yeah, exactly. And I just found that kind of odd. It's like, you walk into the end, it's like, okay, there's a common room for Gryffindor. Wouldn't that be a bad location? Because if it's a common area for the whole school, if you're coming out of it, here come like Ravenclaws and Slytherins and stuff like that, and they're running into you, or if you have a big group of people coming, it's just, I don't know.
Exactly.
But I mean, another thing that got me thinking is, we know that the paintings move in Hogwarts. In the film, Draco draws the picture of Harry getting zapped by lightning, and he throws it to him, a little magical origami goose thing to him, and it's a picture, and the picture is moving that he drew. Wouldn't that be kind of cool if you could draw a picture and it would move? I just don't remember. It's just I guess it would make sense, because
a painting is just a drawing, so
yeah. I don't know. I mean, like the picture of Superman behind you could have Superman lifting the car up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down,
up and moving over, and like hugging the boy or whatever. boy playing with the doll.
I don't know. It just they. I don't know. That just seemed a little odd too. I mean, and the other thing that threw me off is the leaky cauldron. Now in the books, Harry's room looks out on Diagon Alley. In the movie, it's looking out on the metro or the subway track, and it makes the room shake, and is like, okay, that's a little odd. And that's the other thing also is that he blows up his aunt. He gets picked up by the night bus. He gets dropped off at the leaky cauldron. He meets the minister, and the minister's like, yeah, I got your books already. You don't have to worry about those. And you got to go to Hogwarts tomorrow.
Yeah. I know.
Okay.
That is weird. It's very weird. They kind of just skip over them having to get the books. Not only
I know, but the fact, and also that he's there for at least a week, or 2 weeks or something. He's there for like 2 weeks because they have a specific point. It's always September 1st is when they go to Hogwarts. And, in every movie, it seems like something happens and then they got to go to Hogwarts the next day. Yeah. I mean, to be honest, that's what the whole series is. All the big final battles, stuff like that, happen at the end of the year. So, and we talked about this earlier. It's like May and June is a horrible time for the Hogwarts people because everything bad happens in May and June.
Well, people don't really fight in the winter.
Yeah.
The wars aren't held typically throughout history, haven't been held in the dead of winter. So maybe that's
I know, but it's just funny. I don't know.
Yeah, like in the first movie when Hagrid and Harry go and get his books and stuff, and then Hagrid just drops him off at the train station. Time to go to Hogwarts.
The fact is, you have no idea what you're doing. Yeah, it's like I don't know what I'm doing.
Platform 9 3/4. See ya.
Oh, jeez. Oh, it's so fun. And then it's just, I don't know. It just, was a lot of stuff bothered me about it. Not just but a lot of the other thing also is in the movie, when they're facing the boggart and Pavarti and Ron face off against it, and then it's Harry's turn, and Lupin stops him because he thinks it's going to be Voldemort, and he doesn't want Voldemort to pop up in front of everybody. In the film, you see it's a Dementor, and everybody can see what it is. Even though you're the one who's focusing on it, from what I gathered, everyone can see what it is, which is another odd thing because you'd think they would all see it as their biggest fear, but it's focused on.
Focuses on, I think. Or not.
Yeah.
Wait. Yeah. No, not Boggart. Either whatever the Boggart focuses itself on, I think is what it becomes.
But everybody else. But the reason why Lupin jumps in to stop is because he thinks everybody else is going to see Lord Voldemort, and so everybody else apparently can see what Harry is seeing, and then it's actually mentioned in the book also because when Lupin sees the moon, J.K. says that they notice a big ball that looks like the light, that looks like the moon or whatever, and disappears. But the thing that bothers me in the movie is that he comes out, it's a Dementor, and the Dementor is sitting there for like 5 seconds, so everybody can see that it's a Dementor. And then Lupin's like, "Oh, I'm going to jump in there and stop it because I thought it was Lord Voldemort." No, you can see it's a Dementor. Whereas I think in the book he jumped ahead of time before it actually changed because he thought it was going to be Voldemort. This way, it just seemed like, oh, I know it's a Dementor, but I thought it was going to be Lord Voldemort, even though I saw it was a Dementor, so I was going to stop it anyway.
Yeah, that is weird.
It's just I don't know. Yeah, and I know we're talking about a book about magic and stuff like that, and it doesn't have to make complete sense. But there's just some things. Yeah, it does. Yeah. It's more visual in I guess in the film as well, and you don't have as much time to deal with stuff.
Right.
Let me see. Anything else that we want to hit? Anything else you want to? It's a easy. The book is fairly straightforward. It's one that which I kind of like is that Voldemort does not appear in it. He's mentioned, but he does not even appear in it. Because, in the first one, he's, part of the professor, and then the second one, he is Tom Riddle, the part of his the Horcrux, and now he's not in it at all. He's mentioned because they say servant of the Dark Lord, and they mention him, but he's not actually in it at all, which is good because it's leading up to, we find out what happens in the fourth book is that's when he actually returns, and then he pops up in all the rest of them. No, in number 6, he is more in the background again, but we learn about his history more. So he's not really front and center in number 6. We learn about his history, but he's not front and center in that one. And then number 7, of course, we know is the big one for Voldemort. So some interesting stuff. But this was, number 4, the Goblet of Fire is the turning point in the series. Mm-hmm. It's the midpoint of the series, and it's the one where everything changes. But the third one is one that sets up everything, and I kind of like that, because the first one you had to introduce the characters. The second one was just sort of, okay, this is an adventure that happens in the world, and we're going to introduce a few little more aspects to the Harry Potter world we discussed last month, and then the third one says, okay, we're going to introduce all these characters who are going to be important in the future, and then the concepts and ideas that this is where it's going. It's starting to get a little darker. It's going to start getting a little worse than that, and so it should be interesting. The Goblet of Fire should be a very interesting discussion, and I love the fact that we're going to be doing it in December because the Yule Ball is such a big part of it. And I love Goblet, and right now my daughter is halfway through it right now, so she's still reading it. She took a little bit of a breather because she had read the first 3 almost all in a row, and she's got that mindset where she wasn't getting bored with it, but she wanted to read some other stuff. She saw some other stuff she thought was interesting, so she's done that. But she's started reading it up again last night, so she's getting back into it again, which is really cool because I love Goblet, and we'll talk about Goblet next month. Is there anything else? I know one more thing that not upset me, but made me ponder about the film. And once again, I understand why all this happens, is the fact that Harry was able to create a Patronus after only 2 tries. The first try, he doesn't succeed. Mm-hmm. And then the second one, he's like, oh, I did it. It's like, all right, yeah. In the book, though, it takes them a little bit of time because that makes sense, because they keep saying it's hard magic, it's strong magic, and it takes time to learn this stuff. And I understand that they couldn't keep going back to him, failing. I understand that, but to have him do it the second time, and then at the end have him just be an expert at it, which I understand, because in the book he worked at it, and he has that aspect that he knew it was going to work because he had seen it.
He had already
so he knew it was, he'd already done it. So it was just one of those weird, bizarre time travel things. So that's why it was so powerful. But just interesting side note that I noticed. So is there anything else you want to discuss on this one?
No, I'm excited for the Goblet of Fire.
I am too, because there's a lot to talk about there. And it's one of my favorites. I mean, is Goblet one of your favorites too?
It wasn't originally, but it's becoming one of my favorites. I'm actually rereading it right now with the boy that I babysit, and I'm laughing, and whenever I would reread the series, I would typically start with book 5. And I don't know why. It's different because I originally read them when I was younger. So for instance, book 3 was my favorite when I was younger. It is no longer my favorite. It's not even in my top 3 anymore. So I have like young Karen's interpretation of the books, and then 20s Karen interpretation of the book. So it's interesting, but yeah, it is one of my favorites now.
I think you said that Order of the Phoenix is your favorite, right?
I love it because of Luna and Ginny, but I also like book 6 a lot too. I think, book 5 and 6, it's a close race.
Yeah, I'll tell you right off the bat, book 6 is my favorite, and we'll get into that in, let me see, that would be February. Yeah, so we'll get into that in February, why it's my favorite, or we might discuss it down the line. We'll see. I think that's about it. I mean, sorry for the shortened episode of Harry Potter. I mean, we could talk about Harry Potter all day, but Prisoner of Azkaban is one of those where it's a lot of setup. Yeah. It's setting up for the bigger and better things that are coming down the pipe, because from book 4 on, the series just goes in a completely different direction, and it becomes much more interesting. Much more intense, much more interesting. And I love the fact that that's done purposely, because, and I was talking, JK, when she wrote the first book, it was a children's book, basically. I mean, it was short, fun characters, colorful stuff like that. But gradually, as she released the books, she knew that her readers were getting older. So she knew that she needed to go out and dig in a little bit more. And she had this whole big idea that she wanted to get into, and in order to do it, you need to go to some darker places, and she really does in the future books. And that's one of the reasons why I think it's an excellent series, because when you get to like book 5 or book 6, it is almost completely different than book 1 and book 2. And that's good. That's what you want to do, because the kids are getting older. You can't have them dealing with those kind of things that they dealt with in 1 and 2. So that's one of the reasons why I think we love it so much, and why it's still a iconic series, and why it's one of the series that I can keep, much like you, can keep going back and reading over and over again. In fact, I want to go back and reread them all over again. I just finished my reread through like last month. So, hi, baby, you want to come here real quick? This is my daughter, Karen. Aww. This is Noelle. She's the one who's reading Goblet of Fire right now. That's Miss Karen. We're getting ready to finish up, baby. So, was there anything you wanted to tell me real quick? Okay, go get yourself. That's my girl. She's gonna be 9 next month.
Wow.
Yeah. So I got her the Hermione Pop. Funko Pop.
I just got the Harry, Hermione, and Ron.
You might appreciate this. We decorated for Christmas yesterday. I put Dumbledore up with my my Santa Claus and stuff like that, because the Dumbledore Pop is very beard looking, and he's got the red, like the burgundy type of thing, and it looks like Santa Claus. Yeah. So I have him up with. Oh, thank you. She said it was a really clever idea. That's my girl. She's my favorite. All right, everybody out there. I know this was a short one, but Karen and I got stuff we got to do. And to be honest, there really isn't that much more to discuss. I mean, we hit all the main aspects of it. I'm sure once the show's over, I'll think, oh, we should have talked about this, or, oh, we should have talked about that. But exactly. I think we got the general idea down, and we want to save ourselves for the next one, because Goblet of Fire, there's a lot going on in Goblet of Fire. So we'll probably have a longer one then. All right, everybody out there. Once again, Karen, thank you for hanging out with me on this Thanksgiving Saturday, as it were. Thank you for having me. No problem. And have a great rest of your weekend. And everybody out there, hope you enjoy this. We will be back in December. Karen and I work out when, a little bit later on down the line, but we'll be back in December sometime, and we'll be talking Goblet of Fire then. So until then, take care, keep reading, keep watching the films if you want, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Bye-bye.